giving scores. And overall, I was pleased with how you had developed your argument, how you had organized your argument. Remember, that was our cog skill, was organizing our argument, and I was pleased with that. I gave you lots of good feedback, so make sure you look at that. Some of you need to finish up today and get that in, and that's fine. But what do I do if I'm done? Well, that's what we're gonna talk about too. I'm giving you time to finish those goals and then go pack them. Once you finish your goals, go pack them. Okay, all right. So today's work groups will consist of the following cog skill work groups. First of all, finishing the draft checkpoint 5 is Juliana, Damien, and Jerome. I need you to come sit right over here in just a moment. This is to work on organizing your argumentative text. That's the cog skill you're focused on, as well as this group. This group is also focused on that same cog skill. Final product argumentative letter, Elizabeth, Noe, Landon, and Coriana. You'll sit at the middle table. The 4 of you will sit at the middle table. Everyone else that has gotten green or is happy with your score, is pleased with your feedback, can begin the next part. When I met with Ms. Cream and Ms. Sewell, we decided to go a step further with your argumentative writing and go back and reinforce a skill that we had noticed was weaker that we did at the beginning of the year. Who remembers our cultural narratives? Who remembers that? Some of you will remember that. That's right. We felt like we needed to revisit that for a lot of reasons. We felt like we needed to strengthen the cognitive skills of creating those narrative units, the stories, the characters, the setting, the plot, the dialogue, the descriptions, the conflict, how that author puts all those pieces together on purpose to create that narrative, to communicate that narrative effectively. So we felt like we needed to revisit that, but we didn't want to start over with something completely different, because you're already familiar with the research you've done for your argumentative text. You've already put those elements together, right? That's something you know about. Who picked police brutality as their argumentative text? Okay, hands down. Who picked animal rights? Who picked immigration rights? Who picked? Wealth inequality. I knew I had some of those. All right. So you're going to use what you've learned about those argumentative texts and those issues that face our country. You're going to use what you've learned about that to create a narrative. So that means you get to choose a character and tell the story from that character's point of view and create a narrative about that issue, about that argumentative conflict. You know what your arguments are. You know your argumentative claim, you know your subclaim. So you can use that as some of the conflict in your narrative. Right? Who remembers some of the parts of a narrative? I'm going way back. I'm asking you to remember some things.
Some of the starts of the narrative would be the exposition, then you have the rising action, climax, falling action, and the resolution.
Good. Who can tell me what happens in the exposition?
It's like the introduction to where we introduce the characters in a second.
Okay. What about the rising action? Abigail, what happens in the rising action? After we've met the characters and the setting, what happens next? It starts to get more what? Entertaining.
It's
She's right.
It's where the problem, like, you start to realize what the problem is.
You start to realize what the problem is, perhaps. What happens to the problem?
It develops.
Yeah.
You like see it more often and
Yeah.
see how it's happening.
Yes, the author develops that problem more. You've got more detail about the problem. How is that problem happening? Does it get worse or better in the rising action? Worse. Okay, then what happens in the climax, Benjamin?
It's the most suspenseful part, like, even though it's the middle of the story arc, this usually comes at the very end of the story.
Sometimes it can.
And you can messed up. Anyway, usually, from what I've seen, this is usually closer to the end of the story,
Okay.
and it's the most suspenseful part,
Why?
conflicting the problem directly. Like,
All right, the problem's confronted directly.
yes, like the Star Wars,
Okay.
going to blow up the Death Star, that's the climax.
Okay, so they actually get there and do that. Do things begin to solve after that? Yes, that's right. What happens after the climax?
The problem starts to begin to-
All right, what else?
After
After the climax.
the rising act, or the falling action.
Right, the falling action. Why is it called falling action, Alex O? Why do you think?
Because it's when the problem starts to come to an end.
All right, the problem begins to kind of go away, kind of fall. The tension kind of releases, things begin to solve. And then what's the very last part, Tristan?
The resolution,
The resolution. Why is it called that?
like the ending of the movie, like everything's solved and no one's mad or happy, and everybody's happy.
Okay. So we have these 5 parts of that story so that you can organize it. So knowing what you know about your argumentative research and your argumentative situation, what are some story characters or story ideas that come to your mind? Just right off the bat, based on what you picked. Does anybody have an idea, Jalen?
I think it plays one of the characters of the Injustice was.
Maybe I can place a character in that injustice. Wow. That's a good idea.
Maybe the story is their attempt at acting against it.
Oh, maybe somebody's acting against what you want to happen. What do you think? Anybody else? Those are some good ideas. I see the wheels turning, so I'm gonna group you folks together so that maybe you can begin planning a narrative based on the injustice that you chose. You're gonna plan the character, setting, conflict, and plot. You're gonna have a basic story with a beginning, a middle, an ending, and you're going to write your story then. By Friday, I want complete stories. By Friday, I want complete stories from everybody. We're going to begin a novel study after this unit. So let's think back about stories and let's think back about narrative. Let's link what we've worked on in argumentative to narrative. Let's make that jump together, okay? Because I don't want us to forget those things we learned back in August and September. I want us to carry that forward, okay? So we're gonna make that jump together. All right, ready, set, move. I'm gonna give you 20 minutes to work together and then we're gonna discuss. I'm sorry, my clock is still going. So you did a really good job quoting your evidence here. So your evidence matches your claim, and you put it in quotation marks. That tells me it's not your words, so good job. Now you need to give credit to who wrote that. So, let's see what you've done. Okay, in the article, all right, this is a good opportunity. You used a good transition, you used a good transition phrase. So now you put which article, what's the title of it? All right, so then you need to put that in what? How do you present that to me?
According to the or like the title of the article it came from, it states.
Okay. Now, when I see a title, I'm looking for quotation marks around the title, I'm looking for capital letters with that title. and quotation marks around it. What 2 questions do you have?
Well, that one goes.
Which one? All right, you know why? Because it recognizes it as something misspelled, so just ignore it. Okay? Okay. All right, and this is dated January the 26th. And this is dated January the 26th. That was a long time ago. So you should have fixed that. Okay. So always look at those dates. Any other questions?
What has happened is actually happened.
Okay, so that's an explanatory, very interesting. So,
How is this connected to something else?
so it's connected by, tell me how that connection is gonna be right there. What are you gonna choose to do? Oh, your claim. Okay, so you're gonna use your claims in order to do that. And so, who is gonna be your character here?
What does that mean?
How is this going to be connected to?
Ah, that's creative. And so do you have just, I mean, it's just whatever you choose to do, as long as you use your claims.
where do you find?
So how do you know your
title
claims are
automation?
valid and okay
How's this
in that work?
But where do you find it?
Well, my claims are
Checkpoint what?
like
Checkpoint
things
three, has your
with
title
the
automation
characters that
because
I
you all
heard.
in your research.
So I'm hoping that I can make
No,
that become like
your
a
final letter
Okay.
is right here.
Okay. Did you get any feedback on your claims from your teacher?
This is where your whole thing.
I got a green.
You start with
You got a green, so you know what about your claims?
your whole letter.
That they're strong, okay.
Very good. Okay.
All right. All right, I'll leave you alone.
Down to your, look, what's wrong right here? What do you see?
Is this narrative connected to something you've done in the past?
Something in the past is we wrote our own narrative before, and this checkpoint, or this project, we chosen a topic, and we had to write an essay based around that.
Okay. So in order to do this, in order to be successful, what is it you're expected to do? What should you know?
We should know all of our parts of the narrative, and our setting, all those, and we put those in there to the spots where they're supposed to be.
So do you feel like you can do that? What if you had trouble? What would you do if you had trouble? You'd ask Miss Naylor. Is there anybody else you could ask? Would you know? Brayden, you got lots of people you could ask. All right, thank you.
Injustice, the technique, and Marcus Lee's reality. So now we're doing a narrative, so it kind of changes point of view for something. So we're going from explaining something to kind of telling our own stories or how.
So what is checkpoint 5?
It is letter draft, where this is basically when you don't text that I had to write for a topic, and then I have to turn it around.
So how can you be successful at this? Which cog skill are you using?
Right now, I'm trying to tag that somebody has evidence from, so I know that it's not right.
Got you.
I got it ready to go. Yes, ma'am.
Will you put your pen at
Oh, yes, I will. I
What
sure
is the
will.
cog skill for this final narrative?
The cog skill?
Okay, all right, thank you.
If I didn't have a strong.
Very good, I like that, but I like the terminology.
Thank you.
X, according to the article from New Zealand, which article? Do you know what it was called?
So how does this
Okay.
I'm having to write an essay which then narrative which I could write in there. I'm asking the
So how does this tie to your current project?
We had to write just an essay about what it helps you get stronger when you turn that,
So your inequality was wealth and equality. Gotcha. All right, thank you.
No, just as you want to be, we will say no.
You're probably